couple years ago, I got the first license to process marijuana, cannabis here in Michigan, and use that as a launching pad to move into pharmaceutically acceptable dosage forms. So meanwhile, my Michigan cannabis company has grown from 2,000 square feet to a little bit over 1 million square feet for growing and processing cannabis just in Michigan. But my heart is really in creating medicines. And I promised that friend, John, that I would make a drug that would somehow relieve PTSD. So I have created Pure Green Pharmaceuticals. We've met with FDA a couple of times. We have opened what's called INDs, or investigational new drugs. And with FDA's encouragement and permission, we have moved through a series of clinical trials. We have remarkable results. I've filed 8 patents so far. 2 of them have been awarded to me back when people said, you can't get patents in cannabis. Well, I did. And so we've got those patents for our formulations. And what we've done is we've converted this plant into a standard tablet-looking product. I figured out how to make it water-soluble. It's a sublingual tablet with no side effects, incredibly safe. And it reduces pain, anxiety, helps people go to sleep, takes effect in about 5 to 6 minutes, lasts 3 to 4 hours, non-addictive. So that's what I'm doing right now, is running this startup drug company, getting it approved, and making relationships within the pharmaceutical industry. Having been a toxicologist allowed me to make my own scientific value judgments, to know that cannabis is probably the safest plant set of molecules that we have ever come across in pharmaceutical development, despite decades of what I can only call scientific propaganda promulgated under the war on drugs policy. And so once I was able to determine that they were safe by themselves, I was able to look beyond that to the molecules and see if they had effectiveness. I would have a terrific opportunity to develop pharmaceutical formulations, because that's what every drug formulator looks for, is something that's safe and it works. Probably the really significant difference in cannabis versus most other consumer products is, first off, it's a plant. And there are all sorts of difficulties that come from developing products that are plant-based. That is, harvests change all the time, much more in cannabis than even with something like grapes that are turned into wine. And so having a consistent, reliable effect on your patients or your customers is very, very difficult with cannabis, where you grow it and how you grow it. So that affects product development anytime. In addition, because you have a plant that intrinsically has water in it, you therefore have a real potential for microbial contamination. And the standard methods for isolating that microbial contamination in products like irradiation or heat sterilization or acidification, canning, if you do that with cannabis, you destroy its desirable products. So the problem is how to make a safe product and deliver it to the customer while you still maintain high product quality. That's a real challenge. I think that it's going to continue that way. That is, with one person or two within a company having to wear many, many hats. That is, they can't quite yet specialize simply because there are so few talented people with product development experience, real experience, working in the cannabis industry. Frankly, because it's been illegal for so long. And it's only just recently that some universities have started training programs. So that means for the time being, you have a real concentration of different kinds of talents within very few select people in order to develop those. So that just means that somebody has to wear 5 or 6 or 7 hats at the same time, which fits in with this very entrepreneurial culture very, very nicely. But it is changing more and more towards corporate-like food development, product development, OTC drug development program. I'm an American, clearly. Most people think I'm speaking American, and I'm very proud of this country and what it's done for me and my family. It's very interesting that despite it being illegal at the federal level, it is legal at 3/5 or more of the states in the United States. And so while there are other countries that have much better agricultural experience with growing the product, and their climate is much more suitably organized for this kind of product, and therefore the cost of goods, the COGS, are much, much less than anything here in the United States. And there are countries that have a couple decades of science and medical experience with it, all of which continued to be terribly illegal here in America. I've seen in just the last few years this incredible upswelling of entrepreneurial abilities, of science and medical talent clamoring to come into the space. And it's clear that the products coming from the US are much better, much more sort of standards focused towards being consumer acceptable products based on the varying state regulations. It would be better to have federal regulations and standards that are uniform all across, and it has to happen, just has to happen, because international trade is beginning now, and without standards, trade just does not happen. Truly, while my development of my companies are here in America, frankly, I'll make these products anywhere that I can that allow me to make the best, most appropriate consumer-oriented products. Right now, this industry exists with some of the craziest, illogical aspects to it. Products with THC in it that are completely legal in 30 or 40 states can't simply go across a state line to another city. The banking rules are just crazy. The taxation makes running retail stores a terrible, terrible burden to be able to do it. So it's not just standards in the standard food and drug matter, but also in banking and accounting standards also that have to follow on. Products that have CBD in them, FDA says are illegal to sell, but you can find them in every convenience store throughout the United States, actually throughout the world. So it's really important that on a federal level, we begin to understand that standards are the basis for creating sensible legislation and sensible regulation. The industry is happy to help do it. The supply chain is truncated. That is, you need to, within a state, grow the product, extract the product, turn it into a finished product, and sell it within the state. That makes everything much more expensive. It also makes the supply chain more fragile. Even though it's regionally located, that means that even a small break in the distribution chain will bring about terrible economic impact for a company, and the industry is still fragile. So that is the primary way I think it differs from people who are used to being able to buy mass-marketed products anywhere that they like all across the 50 states. Shelf stability is absolutely vital in any product, whether it's a consumer product that's eaten or put onto a body like a cosmetic or a drug that's taken. Consumer products that have shelf stability, or even our cell phones and many other things. So the difficulty in cannabis, as I've mentioned, is because this is a plant. It has a water content. And yes, while the product is dried for material that's going to be smoked, it still has some water content to it, and the matter has a friability to it, a manner of crumbling, and customers help select the product based on how crumbly it acts and how it looks, as well as its aromatic, its organoleptic senses to it. So all of that changes with time every day. For example, the aroma of cannabis is generally due to the terpene content, not actually THC or CBD. And terpenes, those chemicals, are volatile at room temperature. That's why we're able to smell them. So they are decreasing in the product every day after a person buys it. It may give off the smell and make the person think, oh, I bought potent material. But a month later, it has less potency, at least for the terpenes. So the product stability is constantly changing. In addition, the molecules of THC and CBD that are the primary valued molecules at the moment, there are many more, there's molecular changes that go on slowly in everything. So that continues, but the greatest change is the loss of terpenes over time. Other industries that are more mature have had the time to be able to figure out how to enhance their shelf life. So often there are ways to sterilize even vegetables and fruits, and they can be shipped across the world and still arrive fresh. Cannabis has not had that time yet to be able to develop those techniques. In addition, because the product's been illegal for so long, we do not have government agencies like the U.S. Department of Agriculture that is so helpful to farmers to be able to help them figure out how to grow product and deliver it in a regular way. It has not yet helped the cannabis growers to the extent that it has helped other crop products. So yes, there are some packaging that can be done, and certainly product can be kept in the dark instead of light, things like that. But there's a lot more that needs to be done, and it really would benefit from having government agencies help the industry to be able to set standards to enhance product attributes. I think my company makes the most unique and useful products available. That is, we figured out that the body would prefer to have products like this if they were water-soluble rather than oil-soluble. So we made the cannabinoid molecules water-soluble because it goes into the body faster and easier. And then, because we are pharmaceutically oriented, we thought it would be good to have it as a sublingual tablet because it disintegrates in a minute and you can feel the effects in 5 or 6 minutes. You don't have to wait for it to go through the GI tract for an hour or two and get lots of metabolites and degradation. So we made these water-soluble sublingual tablets, and then we've run clinical trials and discovered that they actually work to help relieve symptoms for many, many different disease conditions. So I happen to think that that's, our pride and joy, that is a unique product. And since we're getting patents on them, I think the Patent and Trademark Office agrees. But there are many other people I know who think that their gummies or vape cartridges or other edibles are unique in some way, and many people think that particular strains of cannabis, whatever is hot that week in some geography, is unique in some way, and so I certainly don't want to rain on their parade. I worked for 12 years for a company called Unilever, which is a consumer products company. And while they had many ways of thinking about product development and products, their basic concept was that people should plan the work and then work the plan. And I discovered that's worked for me pretty well throughout my career. And so whether it's the CEO of a company or the janitor or somebody driving a truck, or it's a regulator or a legislator, if you plan your work and then work the plan, I think that people generally find that there is a better outcome. Whether it's a scientific perspective or it's a business perspective, or whether it's a regulator who wants to think, well, what is the end result, the best end result that I could have in my activities? To be able to plan it out 2, 3, 4 years ahead of time is a fabulous luxury. But if you try to do that, then you find that the day-by-day, week-by-week activities begin to fall into place, and the nonsense that comes up along the way to distract can just be left aside because you know the goal that you're aiming for, and you have planned that work and work that way. And it also attracts other very talented people to come do it with you. Makes you less crazy too. Since I've worked in a regulated community for 50 years in drugs and medical devices and foods and consumer products, cannabis people are literally your neighbors and your family. These are not outlaws. They've had to do, if they've been in this industry before regulation, some outlaw things, but they did it to make products as best they could. And if you're going to come along and regulate something, you have to realize these are not inherently bad people. They're actually really knowledgeable about being able to make something that is safe and effective, and they're looking forward to the regulations because none of them wanted to ever be illegal in any way at all. So as you develop regulations and implement them and enforce them, you have to do it with a sense that it will take years of education of yourself and of the other people to be able to work to build a strong American community utilizing these products to relieve pain and anxiety, sleeplessness, all sorts of problems. And so you have a vital role to do it in that way, but you have to do it in a way that frankly makes economic sense, or this industry will just crash and go back to illegality, and nobody wants that.